Welcome to Grounds for Conversations. I'm Amber Noble. It's difficult to find common ground when we focus on things we disagree about. But if we take a step back, we realize that we all have things to learn. Grounds for Conversations is a podcast where we dive into a conversation about Scripture, looking at the story in its entirety. This is for the believer, the questioner, the invested, and the searching. I invite you to join the conversation. Also, at the end of this podcast, stick around for an extra shot, a conversation where we discuss everything about nothing. Welcome to Grounds for Conversations. I'm your host, Amber Noble. Today, we have a very good friend, Matt Smith, with us. Matt, I'm so glad you're here.
Hi, Amber. Thank you for having me.
Okay, so if you know Matt or if you saw Matt, you would think today's episode would not be something that would even line up with him. So I want to go ahead and take this moment to say, if you're used to listening to this and you've got your kids in the car, today is not your normal episode of Grounds for Conversation. What I can promise you is that today is a day that we talk about hope. Today is a day we talk about the goodness of God. Today is a day where we embrace the faithfulness of God. But it is not probably a conversation that needs to be happening around small kids. And if you personally are easily triggered, I just encourage you that at any moment in this, if it's too much, you are not a bad person by turning it off. But I will tell you that if you stick with us and you hang out to the end, you're going to get to hear and see that we have a God of completion and we have a God of redemption. And this wasn't ironic. We planned it this way, but Phil and I met with, and if you hear a voice in the background, his beautiful wife, Callie's with us today, and we're so glad that she's here. But Phil and I met with Matt at a coffee shop. And Matt's just this like cool, chill, happy-go-lucky. He loves everybody. So we're just talking, and Matt starts sharing his story. And I'm like, bro, that's not your life. Like, there's no way. Like, you're telling somebody else's story, and which is such a perfect picture of how good God is. But Phil actually said it before I did. He's like, we got to get him on a podcast. I'm like, yeah. So we decided, because today is actually Good Friday, we asked if that would work for him. And even though this podcast won't come out for, a little bit, the idea that we're getting to talk about this and Matt's getting to share his story on a day that was the darkest day in humanity, that represented the best thing God ever did. And so I think that that's super special, but we wanted to go ahead and make sure you guys that are listening heard that if there are little ears around, this might be something that you wait to listen to when it's just you. But we also didn't want you to start it and then have to answer questions because, little Johnny's in the back seat going, Mom, what's that? Or whatever. So, again, this is not your traditional Grounds for Conversations, but we totally believe God is all over this and it's going to be a good conversation.
Absolutely.
So I'm just glad you're here, Matt. Okay. So, let's start a little bit. There's so much we could talk about. Let's start with your childhood. So how old are you?
37.
37. Okay. So how did this all start? Your journey start?
So my journey started out in Alvin, Texas.
Texas.
Yep. I'm the product of a one-night stand. My dad's a good old country boy. My mom was a little barfly, and
she's a little barfly. Okay.
Yep. And I came about. My dad decided he wanted to make an honest woman out of my mom.
There you go. That is a true Texan right there.
Yes.
Well, I got you pregnant. Make an honest woman out of you.
Absolutely. Okay. And so they moved in together, had me. Unfortunately, 2 months
got married.
Yes, did get married.
So was this how many marriages was this for your mom at this point?
That was my mom's second marriage.
Okay.
Second marriage at that point. My dad quickly found out that my mom struggled with drug abuse.
Okay.
And so him being the man he was, he's like, I can't do this. I don't want this in my life. You're going to have to go. And so my mom took me, and because this is Texas and women get custody a majority of the time. Right. And my dad's not one,
especially during that day and time.
Yes.
So you see more depending on the judge, you'll see judges that will be more open to dads today. But yeah, back then, I mean, mom basically had to have killed people, you know, in order to not get to keep her kids.
And they were 18 and 19 years old when I was born. So it's...
Hold up. How old was your mom? Was 18?
Mom got married the first time at 17.
Bro. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And she was a barfly. She wasn't even legally. Okay. And that doesn't matter. Okay.
Think about the years. You could legally drink at 18 then.
Okay. You're right. Back then it was just like.
At 18, she could legally drink. By the time she turned 19, she had to be 21 to drink.
Okay. Okay. So they get divorced. And where do you guys go?
We move in with my grandparents.
Okay.
Her parents for about 4 or 5 years until she meets her third husband.
Okay.
We move in with him. Everything seems like, you know, we're just, you know, this happy family.
Right.
I think everything's going normal. I don't know much.
Right.
And about a year in, the sexual abuse began from my stepfather. I, to this day,
did your mom know at the time?
I don't know.
Did you tell her, or did he threaten you?
So he did threaten me.
Okay.
He did tell me, you know, this is our little secret. This is our secret time. However, I'm a very stubborn child, always have been. I tried calling her until about 2:00 in the morning, I think, is when I finally lost my voice, lost everything. I literally laid in bed, just, you know, crying out for my mom. She never came. She never anything. So that's when the psychological part of it started, as far as.
Was she at home when all this happened?
Absolutely. She was only a room over.
But she was an addict also.
Correct.
So she could have been completely just passed out.
I don't know her sober state of mind at the time. I know she claims that time period all she would do is smoke marijuana. But I also know from other people that cocaine and heroin were also
very
used heavily. Yeah.
Okay. So the psychological stuff started then.
Yeah. Because I mean, I'm crying out for my mom. And she's not answering. He told me, you know, this is our little secret, you know, whatever. And it continued for every so often. It wasn't regular.
Right.
But it also happened a few times.
Okay.
I want to say 4 or 5 times.
Okay.
Because he shortly after that was actually arrested.
Okay.
For accusations of molestation of his biological son and daughter.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Who were 12 and 5 at the time.
So did he end up going to jail for that? He did. He went to prison?
Yes.
Did you have to get on the stand?
So at that time, it was still my secret.
Wow.
It was, I'm like, cool. God answered
So you never said, hey, this is happening to me too.
Not at that time. Because I had already tried to vocalize it to my mom.
And nobody responded.
And no one responded. But I looked at that as my first, God answered my prayers.
Right.
Because we did go to church on Sundays, but very much so old school 80s, 90s mentality, Episcopalian.
Okay.
Kneel, sit, stand, kneel, pray.
Right. Okay.
Throw a hymnal in there.
Right.
Like I said, photogenically.
Is that weird to you to think about the fact that your mom was deep in addiction and she was still taking you to church? Or was it like, this is just how it is? At
the time, it was normal to me.
Sure.
Just because that's what we did. Looking back, yes and no. The atmosphere, I don't want to say, definitely more growing up in the church climate and saying that as you're just going to church. Did the people in the church know about your mom?
Or do you know?
No.
They
Her parents did a very good job at hiding that entire family's proclivities.
Which, believe it or not, happens in a lot of families.
Absolutely.
In a lot of different types of churches.
Yeah.
So your stepdad went to prison for sexually assaulting his children, and you did not come forward and say, me too. So you carried that. When did you ever tell your mom? Did you ever tell your mom?
So during that whole time, his biological son, my mom would still get custody of him. He was.
Wait, hold on. Your mother.
No, my stepdad's biological son. My mom, so that
that's what I'm saying. Your mother got custody of your stepdad's
weekend visits.
Weekend visits.
Yes.
Okay. When your dad went to prison,
your stepdad?
I'm sorry.
No.
Stepdad went to prison. Your mom still got.
And
wow, how long were they married before all that went down?
Maybe 2 years.
And she still got visitation with them? Did she want it?
His biological mother was also a very bad alcoholic.
Your stepdad's?
My stepdad's ex-wife.
So this little boy went from the frying pan into the fire.
Yes.
Bless his heart. Okay. So this little boy would just come over to the house.
He wasn't little. By this time he was 13, 14.
And your mom still wanted, I think that's the part that's interesting. She still wanted visitation with him.
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know if she I don't know behind that. It may have been so that I had someone to play with.
Or because it looked like she was doing the right thing.
Correct.
Okay.
Only he followed suit behind his dad.
Sure, which is very common.
It is. And so that continued.
So he abused you.
Correct.
How much older was he than you?
5 years.
Wow.
I was 8, 9.
Okay.
I believe at the time. And his actually progressed because it went through his puberty stage. And so rape actually became involved with that one.
Wow.
My dad's parents during this time period started getting, I don't want to say custody, but my dad would forego his visitation so that I could see my grandparents. And so they lived in South Carolina at the time, and I would spend, at the time I actually did
your dad's parents.
Yes. Okay. Yes, my dad's parents. And I did year-round school at the time. So I would spend the month of February, June, and October in South Carolina with them. And my grandfather painted billboards for a living. And so my grandmother and I, our whole job, while he was doing that was to, just hang out and bring, he would send down his hooks and we'd send up, fresh paint or paint brushes, whatever he needed. So he didn't have to come down off the billboards. And my grandmother, being the astute little Irish woman she is, asked me what was wrong one day because I'd had a conversation with my mom the night before. This is obviously well before cell phones and long distance was a thing. So we only got to talk every few days. Well, she had told me that a friend of hers who was living with us at the time was moving out. And previously she had told me the only time she will move out of the house is if my stepdad was coming home, when my stepdad was coming home, because they were fighting his appeals and everything else. And so that was, crud. My prayer got answered and now he's coming back.
Yeah.
And
so you were terrified.
Absolutely. Because, his son had gotten to the age where he didn't, I guess, want to come over anymore. I don't know.
How long was your stepdad in prison?
Eventually, long term, he actually just got released, I think 2 years ago.
Oh, wow. But at that time, it was a short stint because everything was still going back and forth.
Correct. He had only been maybe a year, maybe.
Okay.
And so, in my tiny little kid brain, I'm like, oh, crud. I didn't understand the prison system. I didn't understand any of that. So I was like, oh, he's coming home. And, it's weighing heavy on me. I'm not my normal self. And so my grandmother's like,
what's wrong?
Yeah. And I was like, nothing. And she was like, no, you need to tell me what's going on. And so I told her. And she obviously very upset, kind of just flabbergasted. And she was like, well, have you told your mom? And so I told her, what had happened. She already wasn't a fan of my mom's. And she got my grandfather down, and because they were very frugal with money. And she was like, we're making a long distance phone call this evening. Yeah, that
we're doing it. Okay.
Yeah. And so, he's just kind of oblivious. He's like, all right, whatever. Well, we're sitting in the living room. This is also when, you had one phone in the house and it was in the living room. And she gets my mom on the phone and she's like, do you know this has been happening to your son? And I distinctly remember hearing my mom start yelling at my grandmother. Well, he's just a liar. He's seeking attention. I'm sure he heard us talking about his ongoing cases, this, that, and the other, blah, 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 blah. And because they didn't know that this was happening as far as, he's in prison right now because he's already been found guilty of doing this to two other people. To other children. And so by that point, like my grandmother flew off the handle. She's like, well, you're not getting him back. And my mom's like, my lawyer will say otherwise. And so there was this big hoopla of getting me back to Texas from South Carolina. And my mom assured me that he wasn't coming home. It took, I'd say, about a month of back and forth conversations before, I don't know, I can't speak to my mom's mindset, whether it was a monetary, like, risk of losing child support, whatever it may be. Finally, she's like, so sorry, Matthew, I'm so sorry. Come home. I love you. And at that point in my life, that had been the most steady thing was my mom. So even though,
and also, let's be honest, every kid wants, no matter how awful a mom or dad is, they want that relationship. So for her to be nurturing when she hadn't been, that was what you'd always craved.
Absolutely.
And you're like, things are going to change.
Yeah, this is what it is. Like, absolutely. And then, she got me into counseling. I did end up testifying because we did press charges. So he ended up getting an extension on his sentence. I think he got sentenced to 30 years total and did 20 or something like that. Like I said, he recently got paroled. He's still on parole, but registers.
Sure.
And his son, because at that time it was one of those like, hey, if we're gonna tell the truth, we're telling the whole truth and nothing but the truth.
Right.
And so he got brought up on charges. He got put on juvenile probation, where he was on probation until the age of 21, and ended up violating probation due to drugs and possession of firearms. And so he is currently in prison and has basically spent since his 20s in and out of prison, and is currently incarcerated, and I don't think has a parole date.
And your stepsister?
Don't know. She was never involved. That's why we stopped seeing. That's why he stopped coming over. The mom, their biological mom, died in her sleep of basically she drank herself to death. And liver failure, everything kicked in one weekend while he was over there. And I think the daughter, the stepsister, was at a friend's house.
Okay.
So, I mean, they didn't have to deal with that trauma of walking in on her, but also had to deal with the loss of losing their mother to
Alcohol.
drinking. Yeah.
Right. Wow. Okay. So they got divorced. Your mom and your stepdad eventually got divorced, right? Or did they stay married?
So my mom convinced my grandparents to pay for a lawyer.
Her parents?
Yes, my mom's parents to pay for a lawyer to try to appeal and get him either probation, basically get him home, right? And
they believed he was innocent, even though he had been proven guilty?
I don't believe that at all. So some of the backstory, my grandparents were, Kelly hates when I use this word, but I think she now understands why I do. They were affluent. And so they used their money and influence to
control things
and make it go away.
Right.
Like we'd rather sweep it we know it happened, but we'd rather sweep it under the rug. That way the public eye doesn't know that it happened.
Right.
And
so bringing him home looks better.
Correct.
Than him being in prison.
Correct.
Because if he's home, people will forget all that happened because there's going to be something else happen.
The white picket fence is there. The normal family's there.
Right.
So cool.
Right.
We can just make it go away.
Go away. Even though it's just, we're putting these babies at risk.
Mm-hmm. Because by this time, right before he left, my mom actually got pregnant. And so I had a baby brother.
By him.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Episode 2. No, I'm just kidding.
I mean, we assume.
Okay. So you have a baby brother.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's just me, my mom, and my brother. And she meets my second stepdad, her fourth husband. And I mean, this one, once again, seems like answer to our prayers. Seems like a nice guy,
right? Honest
guy. He actually introduced me to one of my favorite movie sagas of all time, Star Wars. One of their first dates, she couldn't find a babysitter for us. And so he's like, no, bring him over, man. I'll set him up in, the bedroom and, we'll get him watching movies and stuff. And so, I mean, to this day, I can remember watching the old school VHS. Yeah.
Okay. So how old were you?
At that time, I believe I was 12.
Okay. 12 years old.
Yep.
Watching Star Wars.
Yep.
New man's house.
Yep.
Okay.
They have a pretty quick courtship because come to find out they had actually been working together for a few years.
And how long has she been divorced from the previous stepdad? 2 seconds?
Months, a year, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah. Not long enough to breathe.
Okay.
I mean, just one after another.
Right.
And I mean, they got married quick. I want to say within 6 months.
And so your brother is like a toddler.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So much so that he was raised, that stepdad adopted my brother. And I mean, nothing whatsoever.
Okay.
If not for an angry fight between the two of them when he was 18, he would have never even known anything other than him being his dad.
Okay. Did your mom stay married to this guy?
They're still married.
Oh, they're still married. Okay. Okay.
No, not a happy marriage.
Okay.
They can't afford a divorce.
Okay. Well, there you go. Okay. So he was your new stepdad.
Yes.
How was that relationship?
Like I said, at first it was great during the courtship. I mean, it was great. It's like he checked all the boxes, right? He was, courting me at the same time.
Yeah. And you had just been through hell. So this guy's not hurting you and he's letting you watch Star Wars.
Yeah. And he's got a motor. He's got a motorcycle. Let me ride on the motorcycle with him.
That should have been your mom's first red flag. Just kidding.
But I mean, we're talking maybe a month after they got married. the real side of him came out. Very violent, aggressive. And so for a while, it was just that we had to deal with him being violent and aggressive, but never any physical assaults until I was like 13. And, you know, we were getting into a verbal altercation and he was in my face and I was like, get out of my face. And he was like, I'll show you. And literally put his hand over my face and put me through a wall. And I mean, my mom witnessed everything and I look up at her just in tears, like, and she looks down at me and she was like, quit being over dramatic. You're not going to do this with another one. And by this time I'd at least
hold on, stop.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You're not going to, after everything the previous stepdad had done.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now this stepdad is abusing you physically and she says, you're not going to do this. Basically, you're not going to ruin this for me.
Yes. Yeah. I'm not going to ruin another good relationship for her.
Okay.
My dad, after I had gotten back from South Carolina, had done the best he could to take a more active role in my life. Now, during that time period, and
the South Carolina grandparents were the previous stepdad's parents.
No.
It was your
biological dad's parents.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Biological dad's parents.
Okay.
And so he took a more active role. Now, this is also in part to he married a wonderful woman. I to this day refer to her as my mom. Like she's in my phone as the mother.
The mother?
Yeah.
The mother.
Well, because it's the father, the mother. Yeah. And so
I love that.
And
I'm changing all my contacts, by the way,
right?
After this is over.
She didn't give him a choice. She was like, you need to man up.
You've got a kid.
Yeah. You've got a kid and you've got a kid that's hurting. Like you've got a kid that's gone through some stuff. You need to be there. Now my dad, because of the work he does, shut down, turn around, works in petrochem, plants. Unfortunately, the availability is not always there.
Right.
Works a lot of weekends and stuff like that. But when he did have the availability, it was, hey, we're coming to get him. He's going to spend the weekend with us, stuff like that. And I told him what was going on. And they're like, no, it's not going to happen again. This is not going to happen again. So they got a lawyer because they were going to take my mom to court and get custody. Well, during that process, of course, my mom and I get into a fight one weekend or 1 week, whatever. And I'm like, well, that's fine because I'm going to go live with them anyways because, they're getting a lawyer and I'm going to go live with them. Well, at this point as an adult, how I can see the whole picture.
Right.
My mom was very fearful of losing child support because with, my dad's career path came, a very hefty child support payment.
Right.
My mom was able to kind of freely work as she wanted, if she wanted, because it compensated for income. And so then Nice Mom came around. No, Matthew, I love you. You're
which is what you wanted so bad
the whole time. I just wanted, I wanted to be wanted. I wanted to be protected. I wanted to be wanted. And so it was getting close to D-Day. We were supposed to go meet. I was with my dad. We were supposed to go meet with the lawyer. And I flat out got asked, like, so are you ready to do this? And I said, no, because I want to stay where I'm at.
Do you think that they understood that she was manipulating you, or do you think it just hurt their feelings?
I think it was both. I think they understood
that she was playing the game.
They knew. But I think, and I can't speak for them, but I almost feel like they expected me to have the wherewithal to understand myself.
Sure.
That I was being played.
Right.
But yes, there was most definitely hurt because my dad was never one to throw things back in my face. But that was definitely something that got thrown back in my face as I grew up past that. Anytime I would complain about, life at home, and so you had your chance.
Yeah.
And then, we're getting up to 14, 15. I'm now playing sports and things like that. So.
And you were good at sports.
I was. The passion, the drive.
Well, probably there was a lot of built up
anger
that you used as a tool, right?
Yes, it was an outlet. It was a healthy outlet that I had for the anger and just everything else.
So you're 14, 15, you're playing sports, you're doing really good.
Yeah.
And things are going in a good direction.
Yeah.
Kind of, right? Like as good as they could in the circumstances you were in.
So I taught myself, God taught me how to go to a special place in my own head.
Okay.
When bad things would happen, if he would hit me or, it would get to that point. I knew how to go away, like mentally.
Just check out.
Yeah. Body's here. Mine's not, like the physical pain.
So dangerous.
Gone.
Like, do you know what I'm saying? How scary, how dangerous.
Absolutely.
And okay, so you 16. Let's go to that place. All right. You're killing it in sports.
Yes.
You're playing football.
Yes.
And
lacrosse.
Yes. Okay. And
going to church twice a week, still going Sundays, still going Wednesdays. Wednesdays all me, and Sundays as a family.
Right. Which the cool thing, what people don't realize though, is a lot of times kids that go to church on Wednesday nights, which keep having youth group, because you're reaching them, you're planting seed, which we see that some of that has been come to fruition, obviously, right? Yes. But a lot of times kids go to church for their friends.
Yeah.
It's fun. They're hanging out. They're getting out of the house. They're not having to clean up anything. And
it was definitely a combination of both.
Right.
Looking at it from.
What kind of church were you in?
Episcopalian.
Okay.
Catholic light.
Okay. Catholic light. Okay. But you're there on Sundays. You're there on Wednesdays.
Yep.
Things seem somewhat okay.
Yeah.
Other than the monster stepdad.
Yeah.
Right.
Which everyone's got one, right?
Or that's what you thought.
That's what I thought.
Right. That was your norm. And then you're driving down the road. Oh, wait. You had people that were already talking to you about college. You were looking at being scouted and all of the things.
Yeah.
Right.
I was going into my junior year, going to be a returning varsity letterman at a major 5A school.
You were varsity letterman your sophomore year?
Going to be by preseason my junior year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
and then varsity for lacrosse.
Okay.
Now we're in Texas, so lacrosse is a small sport, but still.
It's still a sport.
Yeah, exactly.
And Texas is all about sport.
Absolutely.
So you're in a 5A school. What school district were you in?
Humble.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're in a good school district for sports and you're 16. And then what happens?
So I'm also working part-time jobs.
Okay.
Did a lock-in, shameless plug. I was working for Mount Asia. I don't even know if they have those anymore.
A what?
A Mount Asia.
Mount Asia.
They had putt-putt golf, go-karts and bumper boats and an arcade.
Yes. And churches would rent them
and we would do lock-ins.
So that, because lock-ins at the church, because let me just take you back a little bit. Grew up in ministry, lock-ins at the church were incredibly dangerous because hormonal teenagers would find places to hide, right? You're like, this is not good. So they started doing lockouts or lock-ins at places like Mount Asia.
And that's what it was. Not mine, but
it was
one
another
of the other
church.
church.
So you're working it. You're not just hanging out.
Correct.
So you're up all night.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And so
Friday night, Saturday night? Probably Friday night because they have church the next day.
This is during the summer.
Oh, okay.
So it was actually, I think, like a Wednesday night going into Thursday.
Okay.
And so I'm driving home the next day. And I remember leaving work. I remember turning on to 1960.
Which for those of you who don't know, 1960 is like this long, busy road.
1960 lights.
And they all last forever. Yes. The worst road in Texas, in my opinion.
Absolutely. It's terrible.
And if your business is on 1960 and this is offending you, just encourage you to find a new location to put your business.
Or practice forgiveness. Sorry.
One of the two. Yeah. Okay. So you're 1960 going home.
Yep. Tired. Know that I'm tired.
Sure.
Try calling my mom.
Once again.
I want to say they said when they found my phone, there were 10.
Oh, so you had a cell phone.
This is one I had to pay for. This is back in the day. I had a job. One of the good lessons I was taught was if you want nice things, you earn money, you buy them yourself.
Good life lesson.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I was able to buy a prepaid phone.
Right. And that's what they all were back then. They were and then they came out with the new plans where after like 8:00 at night, the phone calls were free.
Yep.
So you would tell all your friends, I'm not calling you till 8.
Yep.
Because I only have 7 minutes.
But you had to be 18 to get one of those because you had to contract.
Right.
Yep.
Right. Okay. So you have this phone.
And, I'm burning all my minutes.
Trying to call your mom.
Let me talk to somebody. Like the act of talking to somebody
was going to keep you awake.
Would at least help stimulate me enough to get me home.
Moment number 2, which there's probably many moments, but another major moment when you're crying out to your mom.
Yeah. I think they said there were like 10 missed calls that I had tried to call her like 10 times. And I remember trying to call the last time, turning down 1960, passing Townsend Road.
Okay.
And I remember waking up, going through a ditch and hitting a tree and just kind of being in and out. Didn't know what was going on. Opening the door, trying to get out of the car, but I couldn't. And then there was a voice. There was a lady who opened up the door.
It's okay. It's okay.
And that's exactly what she said.
Oh, wow.
She said, it's okay. She asked me if I was okay. I said, yeah, I'm breathing. I'm okay. Is the car okay? This is my mom's car. Is the car okay? She said, don't worry about the car. My husband's, on the phone with the ambulance. They're on their way. Had absolutely no idea how severe any of this was. Like I said, I was in shock.
Yeah.
Well, and when I woke up,
right?
I was in shock. I was just trying to get out of the car. And then all of a sudden, the fire department's there. Everyone else is there. They're like, we need you to hold still. And I'm like, what's going on, man? The door's right here. Like, why? Just let me get out. My home is literally, I can see the turnoff to my neighborhood. Geographically, I was less than a half a mile away from my house.
Which, they say that happens like 90% of the time or something like that.
Less than a half a mile away. Less than 200 feet from the turnoff to my neighborhood.
So this is in the morning. What's this like?
No, this is probably noonish.
Okay.
Because we had to clean up after the lock-in.
Oh, so you're so tired.
Yes, we had to clean up after the lock-in. So, I was exhausted.
Sure.
And so, fire department's there and all of a sudden out starts coming saws and this, that. And I'm like, yo, how serious is this?
Right. Don't cut my mom's car.
Yeah. And during this time, a nurse came in EMT, got in the back seat and was like, I need to see your arm. And I'm like, okay. They're like, we need you to calm down. That was my first experience with narcotics as well. Without even, I would say, needing it. I got given Dilaudid, not even morphine. Found out later it was Dilaudid.
They just went straight to the hard stuff.
Absolutely. And to this day, I can still describe the exact feeling of the first time. And I mean, after that, I'm cutting jokes the rest of the time. Like, I'm like, what y'all need those for? Like, they pulled out the jaws of life and everything else. They get me on the gurney, they get me in the helicopter. And I remember.
Wait, okay, hold on. You're on 1960 and they put you on a helicopter.
Yes.
So you were life flighted.
Yes. I was being life flighted. To Memorial Hermann Hospital downtown. Meanwhile, there's Kingwood Hospital, there's stuff like that.
Yeah, but this isn't obviously if they're taking you to Memorial Hermann.
Yeah,
at that day and time, this is a big deal.
Yeah.
So if just for perspective, if a helicopter, if the life flight has to land on 1960, all of Houston shut down. Is basically what you're saying.
Yeah. All of Northeast Houston is inconvenienced at that point.
Yes.
It made the front page of the paper. A tree, an oak tree.
Do they know how fast you were going?
85 is where the speedometer was tacked.
Okay.
Across 5 lanes of traffic.
Was it how many cars were hit?
Absolutely none.
It was just you. At 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
At 1 o'clock in the afternoon on a very busy
on the
road.
Busiest road other than 45
in Northeast Houston.
Gosh.
Yeah.
And nothing else.
Nope.
Okay. So they life flight you to Memorial Hermann. What happens?
So I'm laying there and like I said, at this point, I'm high. Yeah. Like I'm, the shock, everything else, the dilaudid, I'm cutting jokes, used to ER. I'm like, aren't y'all supposed to be running right now?
Yeah.
And they're like, trust me, we are. And I'm like, oh, doesn't seem like it's me.
Right.
Well, I'm laying there kind of conscious, unconscious on the hospital bed. And the doctor's asking to see pictures of the vehicle and stuff like that. And all I hear is, when's the corpse getting here? They're like, no. He was the only one in the car. Meanwhile, I haven't seen the car. I don't know anything about what's going on. But at this time, I'm kind of able to start moving around and I look up. My leg's not attached. My leg's literally just hanging off the side of the gurney. And I remember feeling anger, just rage and anger and overall confusion. Like what was going on. My only thought was, I'm never even going to be able to walk again. Like, am I even going to have a leg? Anything like that. And, so I started asking questions. I'm like, what's going on? What's this? And they're like, look, we're doing everything we can. You're here so we can save your leg. Check me out for brain trauma, anything like that. Come back from CAT scans, everything else. And they're like, no head trauma whatsoever. Just it's classified as a multiple compound tibia-fibia fracture. Basically from my shin down became detached. My calf muscle is what was
holding it together.
My ankle and my foot onto my leg.
Good grief.
Yeah. And so several surgeries later, I actually had a titanium rod placed in my leg for a long time. My dad joked that I was the $1 million man.
Yeah.
Because by the time all the surgeries, ended up having to get a muscle graft, bone graft, all kinds of grafts, plates, pins, everything else. But I still had a leg. Right. I didn't view it like that at that time.
Sure.
All I saw it as is
that
was my first question. Am I gonna? Because we're in early July. 2-a-days start August 1st.
Right.
And I'm like, literally, that's my question. Like, am I going to be able to make it to 2-a-days? And the doctor's like, look, man, we're just trying to make it to where you can walk again.
Right.
Like, we're not even worried about that. And I'm like, well, that's what I'm worried about.
Right.
And so just the jadedness continues. And then through this process, I ended up contracting MRSA. MRSA
Right.
from my bone graft. And so here we are again. Like I was getting ready to at least be released from the hospital, be able to go home, see my friends, do something. And then no, they're like, you'll be here for at least another 6 months. Because it had basically gone
through your bones.
Yes.
God,
and
really?
So
6 months, they said?
Yeah.
Were you there 6 months?
Absolutely. It would end up being.
So you're going into
February.
your junior year.
Yes.
And every school's starting.
Yes.
People are doing life.
4.0 GPA.
And you're stuck in a hospital down in Houston.
Yes. Can't.
Downtown Houston, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Basically need. And I need some sort of a voice at the school to like, hey, I'm not dropped out. I'm not anything.
Wait a minute. Nobody like went to this. Your parents. Why am I asking that? Of course they didn't. Like most moms would have.
A check-in. Like I think she sent a letter or something saying, hey, he was in a car accident. But yeah, no, there was no.
There was no follow up and follow through so that teachers could be this. So at this point, they've basically seen you as a dropout.
Yeah. And I'm just.
I don't want you to think that that's the part that upsets me, because obviously she should have been handling business all these other times. But it's just like this one simple thing. She didn't even do that.
Yeah. Yeah. It wasn't until I was able, one of my friends came up to visit me. Matter of fact, I to this day still refer to him as, a legitimate brother from another mother.
Yeah.
He was like, how's school going, man? And I was like, dude, they don't even know. Like, I haven't gotten any schoolwork, anything. Well, he told his mom, and they were able to at least start getting me some classwork so that I could do something.
You would still think, and maybe the world's different, but you would think at that time social services would have stepped in and been like, there would have been like some type of liaison between, because you're a minor, between the hospital and the school. But I mean, maybe I just think the sky is a different color than it is. I don't know, but
you would think.
Yeah. So, okay. So all this happens. Let's fast forward a little bit, because you're in there 6 months. You're on drugs.
Yes. Heavily. Morphine is.
It's just like
wasn't
water.
even an option. Yeah.
When you get out of that hospital, you have, would it be fair to say you have a pretty healthy addiction to pain meds? Absolutely. Okay.
Yeah.
And that turned into what?
A roller coaster, to say the least.
Of addiction.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Before we go into that, there was a moment, because you grew up going to church, not really with a relationship with God. You just went to church. Yeah. Yeah. So you believed in God.
Yes. Yeah.
And in order to be fair, you also believed there was an enemy.
Absolutely.
You believed in the devil.
Yes.
So there was and this is what I think threw me off the most at this little coffee shop. Bro, that day was the afternoon. And I'm at an age where you don't drink a lot of coffee in the afternoon. You had me so shook. I said, excuse me. I got up and went and got another one. You remember that? I had so much caffeine in my system that day because I had drank so much that morning. And then I had 2 that afternoon with you, big ones that afternoon. I got home and I'm like, I'm not sleeping forever. Like I was so like, I don't know what to do with this. You had a moment. Just talk to us about where your belief system went.
So it was probably after I got the MRSA news, when it was, this is not ending. I literally threw my hands up in the air and I said, why? Why, God? What have I done to deserve this? Yeah. What have I done to deserve any of these things? Right. I forsake you. If you're not gonna fight for me, I'm not gonna fight for you. And I'll do you one better. I'm gonna join the other side. if you're not going to be down for me, if you're not going to fight for me, then I will fight against you.
So God became the enemy.
God was the enemy to me at that time.
So where I know that at that moment, that conversation then down the road quickly developed into full-blown Satanism.
Absolutely.
Where was your exposure to Satanism? Where did that start?
So I had a cousin that would always talk about, Marilyn Manson and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And she was
It was a she.
Yes.
Bro.
She was an outspoken Wiccan, pagan. And so, she would always talk to me about paganism and Satanism and, hey, there's this whole other, side of the world where,
come check it out.
Yeah. You don't get punished for your sins. You get rewarded for them.
Yeah.
Like there's, you get to live the way you want in the afterlife. All you have to do is, pledge your soul to him. And so at that juncture in my life, drug fueled, jaded, angry,
very broken and hurt little boy still in there.
Absolutely.
What did you said something that she gave you a book.
Yeah, it's the Book of Shadows. Never even really read it, skimmed over it, like looked at it. And I'm like, oh, some cool pictures. That looks like some demonic, scary stuff. Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Let's dig into this. A bunch of rituals, things like that. Obviously, I was a bad Satanist. Some of it was, I was.
You didn't read the book.
And a little woozy. Like I'm not gonna drink goat's blood. But I'll pledge my soul.
Yeah. So here's what I think is interesting is that when you were talking to us about this the other day, I remember I asked you, I said, wait a minute, but you still believed in God. And you were like, yes, because in order to have dark, you have to have light. And in order to have light, you have to have dark. I'm like, I get that, but you still believed in God. And you were like, yes. And you believed that a person that gives their heart to Christ goes to heaven. And you're like, yes, I believed that.
Yeah.
And I said, so you were okay with going to hell. And that's when you explained to me that Satanists believe that if their pledge is to Satan, when they die and go to hell, they're not burning in the lake of fire. They're the ones torturing the bad guys.
Yeah.
So you had a list, is what you said, of people in your mind that have hurt you all your life. And you're like, I'll be there waiting. That's what you told me. I'll be there waiting for them.
Absolutely. And that was my mindset was, trust me, I know he's not going to take, if he's going to allow the things that happen to me, then I know you're not going. And so I'll see you down there.
Right. Okay. And so what's interesting to me is as believers, we have the Holy Spirit and God speaks to us and like we have discernment. And there's moments where you're just like, man, I just have this weird feeling. We shouldn't go here today, or we shouldn't do this, whatever. And we have the Word of God and we have all these things. Well, you said that that's kind of how it was for you with the devil. He just talked to you and he built you up all these promises and he built your ego. How long would you say you practice Satanism?
I'd say as far as living in it, at least 10 years, but it would be 15 before I would, begin what would be the rest of my story.
15 years. Actively following Satan.
Yeah. Living for me of the world.
See, I don't think people realize though, that if you don't serve God, there is a God, you serve someone.
Absolutely.
But for you, there's so many people that are like, well, I'm not a Satanist. They may not be, but you took it to the next level. You're like, I am.
Yeah.
I mean, because when we die, we go to heaven or hell, right? Yeah. And so people who do not follow after Christ, according to scripture, they end up in hell.
And so mine was.
And those people are, so many of them are like, how did I get here? You were like, oh, no. I'm setting up real estate.
Yeah. My belief system at that time was, let me go ahead and stamp my ticket.
Right.
That way. And I mean, the ego that came behind it and what I thought was freedom at the time, as far as you're going to, talking to Satan, like, you're going to have my room ready for me. You're going to have these souls ready for me. And if you don't, I'll knock you off your throne and make the room myself.
So absorbed in yourself.
And angry, like the rage.
Yeah.
Like,
so would you consider yourself goth? Were you gothic?
Oh, so bad.
Did you wear like the Jinkos?
Oh, yeah.
I didn't ask you that the other day, but like
Jinkos. Oh yeah. Nail polish with the upside down cross eyeliner. Oh
Matt,
yeah.
And you just look like you love J. Crew. I know you don't. You're like, Amber, I hate you for saying that. But you know what I'm saying? You're cool. You're a cool dad. But you know what I'm saying? You don't look like the guy that ever was goth.
Until I take my shirt off.
Because why?
I am covered in satanic tattoos. Not my shoulder and my back. Yeah.
Completely covered.
Mm-hmm.
And understand this, for the record, the style of goth today does not always associate. There's a lot of people who have that style and love Jesus. This is
pre-Abercrombie Hot Topic. This is back
hot
when
topic.
This is
Hot topic.
Yep, this is back when normal people wouldn't have gone into Hot Topic. They walked past it quickly. They're like,
because they were
that
scared.
place is scary.
Yeah.
Old wooden pillars up front and everything else, not the My Chemical Romance Hot Topic we have today.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So your back is completely covered in satanic tattoos.
Yes. And not only that, sacrilegious. It's a burning cross.
Oh, wow.
With demonic souls coming out of it.
So 15 years of just this lifestyle. In the process, you have a lot of addiction. You got a lot of drug use, which leads to...
everything under the sun, sexual promiscuity, just...
Prison?
Yes. When I was in my late teens, early 20s. So pretty much once I was mobile after all this, because I mean, sports are gone. Sports are done.
Right.
Academics, they're done. Now I'll go ahead and give myself a wink and a nod for this one. I dropped out of high school. I have my high school diploma.
How'd you do that?
I found a program that was through our school district, that I was able to, it's called PACE.
And get caught up
and not only get caught up, I actually completed my junior and senior year of schoolwork in 9 weeks. I actually finished all of my schoolwork a month and a half before the rest of my class graduated.
Wow.
And it was honestly a moment of clarity going, don't be that person. Like you have an intellectual potential. Don't be that person.
Right.
Because before this, straight A student. And so went back and almost as a, because by that point I'm being called the, drug addict, high school dropout, and, almost one of those stubbornness. I'll show you, know, and I, would boast, be like, I'm going to go in and take my final on, 3 hits of acid today. Let's see how I do. But still managed to graduate. Got my actual high school diploma. Did you
walk with the rest of your...
I didn't.
Okay.
I made an active choice. I was going to go to Project Grad, but the whole point was I wanted to get really messed up.
Yeah.
Before Project Grad, only I got so messed up I forgot about Project Grad. My friends literally all called me the next day and they're like, "What happened, man?" And I was like, "Dude, I'm getting ready. We're supposed to meet there tonight." And they were like, "Dude, that was a night ago." And so didn't have really a career path or anything else. I've always been charismatic, and a smooth talker. So I fell into selling drugs. I mean, if you're going to do this amount of drugs, you might as well start selling them.
Mm-hmm.
And also to support my own drug habits at that point. Best way to support your drug habit is to sell drugs, right?
Sure.
And so end up getting caught with a pretty hefty amount of crystal meth, actually. I'm arrested with 112 grams, which carries some major charges. Hire a lawyer, able to beat those charges, only to be so high when I went in to get released. Because I also got put on house arrest during that, cut my ankle monitor. I was like, can't hold me down. I'm gonna go run. And but anyways, through all that, you have to be processed back out, right? Because you're basically on bond. You're property of the state still. You just get to do it at home. So while being processed out, they still bring you into the jail, search you and everything else. Had a gram of cocaine in my pocket. Literally just
didn't care.
No, I'm untouchable at that point, right? I just beat this, big drug case.
You are a Satanist. You're like,
oh yeah.
This is fine.
Yep.
It's whatever.
It is what it is. And, they pull it out and they're like, what is that? And I'm like, you think it is? And they're like, dude, you know that that's another felony, right? And I'm like, I'll beat this one too. Ha ha ha. Joke's on me. No, you can't beat a possession like when you're on their property and they pull it out of your pocket.
Right.
Oops, are my pants.
Yeah.
No. But end up getting probation. And so I'm like, another slap on the wrist. I'm like, cool. Don't have to worry about that. But part of that's you got to get a job and stuff like that. I also had to start attending outpatient rehabs.
Yeah.
That's a joke. If your mind's not right, that's a joke. It's just another place to find more addicts.
Yeah. Which is basically more connections.
Correct. Or for me, because I immediately fell back into, selling narcotics because I got to get a job, right? I got probation fees, court fees, everything else. With a felony, it's not, or at least the mindset I had was, I'm a felon. None of the stuff I ever wanted to do, I can't do anymore. So cool. I'm just going to sell some drugs. End up faking drug tests for a couple months, get caught, get sent to an inpatient state-run, TDC-run facility, snitch camps, some people call them. They are behavioral modification centers.
Wow.
Now this isn't the out in the woods, like crazy ones, but think inmate, right? Like we're handcuffed to move, nothing comfortable to sleep in, 8 people to a dorm. And so I go into one of these programs, and in pops, my mom's parents again during this time period, because they're like, oh, we miss our grandson. We need to go see him. And this will forever be burned in my mind, because it was one of the.
Are they still alive?
Unfortunately not.
Okay.
They have both passed.
Okay.
Both my dad's parents are still alive though.
Okay.
But this will I'll forever remember it, because it kind of one of my first times of just accountability. I'm sitting there, in my little jail jumpsuit, prison jumpsuit, whatever. We're out at visitation. My grandfather's just flabbergasted. He was like, none of our family lives like this. We're not seen like this. We're not who's in charge here? You need to tell me who's in charge. How much money is it going to take? You're walking out of here today. You are coming home with us. And I mean, he starts making a scene. And I'm like, And I'm
he
like,
acts like this is something that was a choice.
Oh yeah. He's no, not necessarily a choice, but something that there is no monetary figure that he can't provide to allow me to go home with them. And I looked at him and I was like, Grandpa, I'm where I have to be right now. And I can, just thinking about it now, that's probably one of the first times in my life I ever took accountability for a single thing. Because any of the mistakes I ever made, any of the stuff, it was always, well, I had a bad childhood, or, this happened to me, or God forsook me. So, I was forsaken. So that's why I have this attitude. And it was very much so a sombering moment of, no, Grandpa, like, this is on me. I got to do this. I'm not happy to be here either, but like, I need to finish this. And I did. Now this is also a program that, so you go in with a finite amount of time. Punishment is time. In other words, so there are degrees of punishments though. Some, you lose privileges, which it's not like you have a lot of privileges. But an egregious enough offense is more time added on. And this can be anywhere from a week to 3 months at a time. I knew I didn't want to be in there. And so fake it till you make it. And that's where the intellectual part helped me out, because, there's a list of rules, there's all this. Memorized them the first week. Figured out, all right, so I can do this and not get time. I can do this and not get time, this, that, and the other. Cool. I have to learn this. Oh, you mean if I learn all this, I can become a coordinator, which means I get more responsibility or more privileges, which means I can get away with more stuff. So then I can work the system this way. And just, schmoozed my way through that and was able to, by the time it was done, wearing blue jeans and a t-shirt, not having to shave, just, sitting at my bunk, waiting on time to get out. All I had to do was, by that point, not get caught smoking, not get caught using drugs, and don't fight. And I'm like, I got a month left. I can do this. And did, and was, it was one of those programs we got to walk out the front door. One of the first, actually that when I did that, one of the first phone calls was my brother from another mother. I'm like, hey man, just got out. And he's like, cool. He's like, I'm gonna come pick you up. His parents were like, hey, we know you're going through it right now. Come live with us. And I'm like, cool. I could really use that. But it didn't take long because, we also, enjoyed doing drugs together. And so
you and his parents?
No.
You and your friend.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it only took, one little weekend bender before, I'm out of money. And I'm like, only thing I know how to do is go out there and hustle.
Right.
And that time, I had a pretty good run at it, right? Went 18 months without, any failed UAs or anything like that. And then probation officer called me in for a random. I was not prepared for that random. Yeah,
I was not prepared.
Nope. And went in and not only did I have visible track marks, did not have anything.
So you were using heroin?
Oh, yeah. Intravenously, heroin, cocaine, would, I know how to synthesize Dilaudid, Oxycontin.
So anything you could get your hands on, you were using.
Yeah. Now I had some guidelines, right? There were some that I had tried that I was like, no, not my cup of tea. But yeah.
Isn't that funny how addicts are like, yeah, but at least I don't do that.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what it was. It was like, yeah, I do that, but I don't smoke crack.
Yeah.
Like, or I don't smoke PCP. Like what I was doing was any
better. Right. So when you go in, did you have to do prison time after that?
I did.
How long?
So between county inpatient and actual prison time, it was like 36 months total. I had to do 9 months straight at Pam Lynchner TDCJ facility, which is a state jail, but coincides with TDCJ. So one part of it is long-term prisoners. The other part is finite day-to-day prisoners. And that was state jail is one of those that's rough.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you hear about maximum security and stuff, which don't get me wrong. Cause I had a staph flare up while I was in there. So I had to do a little traveling around TDC facilities to get to the medical facility in Galveston, which is funny. I ended up in like North Texas at one point to end up all the way in Galveston, but saw some maximum security. And I'm like, no, I'm good. But state jail, because you have a finite date, right? That one, there's no parole, there's no nothing. You're just given a certain amount of time, fighting all day, every day.
Survival.
Yes. And you'll have some people that give conflicting information, but at the end of the day, it's segregated also. Sure. You do have people that sway, but for the most part.
But you've also, let's keep in mind, you're also worshiping the devil.
Yeah.
In the middle of all this.
Oh, yeah.
So there's still even a jaded perspective of just humanity.
Oh, yeah. Most definitely.
Regardless of gang affiliations, regardless of culture, regardless of color, you're not even in a healthy mindset to even value humanity while you're in there.
No.
Okay. So you get out of prison. I want, because I mean, we probably could do like 50 podcasts about your life, right? But I want to fast forward to where you hit rock bottom and the Lord meets you.
So after I got out of prison, my dad becomes involved again.
Which I love.
Actively involved, actually. And by this time...
Did your dad... I was going to ask you that. Does your dad and the mother know that you are a Satanist?
I mean, I never outright came out and said it.
Your mom, the mother, she's devout Catholic.
Yes.
So she's very committed to her faith.
Yes.
So for someone like that to know that you would worship the devil, that would have had to have been like devastating.
I never outwardly came out and said it, but like I said, you can't miss the tattoos.
Right.
And it's, whenever we would go to the pool or, something like that, I didn't hide them. Yeah. And, they're very visibly satanic and pagan. Like they're you can't miss them. So
she probably said a lot of prayers for you.
I'm sure she did.
A lot of rosary beads, lots of.
Yes.
Okay. So
a lot of Hail Marys.
Yes. So then your dad gets back involved in your life. And what does that look like?
So
moving to where
in this period of time, while I was going through all that, he and my mom establish a family. I've actually got 3 younger brothers who are 17 and 21, 18 and 21. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Seniors in high school and a junior in college right now.
Oh, so the seniors are twins? Oh, how precious is that?
Yes.
That's fun. Okay.
Yes. And so, and I could tell, cause he actually, he apologized to me, for not being there. Even when he knew he should have been, and I wasn't in a healthy enough place to make decisions on my own.
Wow.
So that was the beginning
That's
of
amazing.
our healing.
Yeah.
And I took accountability for, not being the best son, because I've always, ever since that accountability moment,
Right.
I've almost seemed to have gotten better and better about taking accountability.
Well, it's kind of freeing though, right?
It is, absolutely. Even while, still being a Satanist, like, yeah, it's on me,
So weird.
right? But it's one of those, and call it freedom because I know sin's not gonna affect me.
Right.
Yeah, I did that. So what? Punish me and let's get this over with. Like at this point, I'm like, punishment are you gonna dish out?
Right.
Like, let's go.
So you get a job.
Yes.
And
I get married first.
Oh, I forgot about that part.
Yeah.
You got married to a classy broad.
Yeah. Someone who checked all the boxes for my parents. Because at this point, I'm like, look, I've hurt my dad enough. He's apologized to me. I just want to make my dad happy at this point. Because also keep in mind, I'm, in my early 20s. Had never heard the words "I'm proud of you" come out of my dad's mouth. And so, that was the next goal line, right?
Right. I want my dad to be proud.
I'm going to do something. I'm going to make my dad proud.
Right. So I'm going to marry this girl.
While doing me.
Right.
But I'm still going to make my dad proud.
Right.
And so I'm going to marry this girl. She checks all the boxes. Hey, maybe it'll help keep me on the straight and narrow.
Was she an addict?
No.
Okay.
Not at all. Not even a heavy drinker when we first met. Pot every now and then, would drink.
Right.
That would progress. And
how long were y'all married?
8 years.
8 years.
8 years.
I didn't realize it was that long.
But did not live together for 4 of those years, the last 4 years. She lived in Galveston and I lived in Kingwood.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Weekend warrior. Okay. Yep. So then you're just angry at God.
Mm-hmm.
You guys get divorced, right?
So we go on a cruise for our anniversary.
That's so weird. You didn't live together, but we're going to celebrate.
Yeah.
We're going to celebrate this lack of marriage we have.
Yeah. Because at this point, it's the facade, right?
Right.
I need everything to look, I need falling into, family
history, the way they've always done things, right?
Correct. Falling into that mentality of I just need everything to look
a certain way.
Okay.
Yeah. So you go on a cruise.
And that was the loneliest.
Oh, I have no idea. I have no doubt.
I've ever felt in my life. And I knew at the end of that it was done.
Did she know?
She had to have. We had conversations.
Was she a good person?
No.
Okay.
No. I mean, want to say yes.
She was nice or anything.
No. Okay. She was one of those people who would be very nice to your face, but then the moment you turned your back, would have a laundry list of just so bad. Okay. And not only that, during this time period while I had a job, we would get into arguments about why I don't make more money. And I'm like, look, I'm a multiple convicted felon here.
Right.
Like it's
you knew what
hard.
You were getting into.
Yeah. It's not.
Was she a Satanist too?
No, she was an unbeliever.
Okay. So you get divorced. Mm-hmm. You're at the bottom of the barrel.
Yeah.
You get a different job, right? Or it's the same job?
Well, I had changed jobs in there, but still working at the same place while that was happening.
And then you have you're just this angry little guy.
Yeah. I'm just trying to float on at this point. I'm confused. I don't know what's.
And you're saying things about your faith.
Yeah.
And insert Callie.
Mm-hmm.
She's a single mom of these 2 little babies.
Yep.
And she's a believer and she's on her
Yes.
own journey.
Yes.
And she says what to you? You're making one of your declarations. And she says what?
That's not true. Because my declaration was, I've already stamped my ticket. I'm just waiting to cash it in. And she just, in the softest words, it's not true. And I was like, what part? You know, just very aggressively. Yeah, very aggressively. Like, what part's not true? And she goes, your ticket's not stamped. You're not done. And I was like, shows what you know. You don't know my past. You don't know me. And she's like, but I know him.
Oh, Callie. I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Y'all just worked together.
Yeah.
It wasn't like you're like, oh, I want to date her. And she was like, she thought you were freaky.
Oh, yeah. She was appalled by
Dude,
me.
you had like a ninja ponytail.
Yes. Very.
And headbands.
Yes. Yeah.
Not that that's the reason we're appalled by, but yeah. Okay,
no, it was probably the chain smoking and monster addiction.
Probably the allegiance to Satan had something to do with that.
I mean, maybe a little bit.
I mean, that would be a turnoff for me.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So anyway, she says this to you and it starts this process.
It's a mustard seed.
It is. And really, there were probably mustard seeds that were planted early on in your life and you didn't even realize.
No.
But you have this encounter with God.
Well, first, I'm confused, right?
Right.
And so I ask her, I'm like, why would you say something like that? Like, why would you, almost as if, like, why would you even give me hope?
Right.
Like, why would you, and she was like, but have you asked him? She's like, I've heard you say, like, you went to church when you were younger, like, you know how to pray. Have you asked him? And I was like, got nothing to say to him, like an ex,
Right.
Like, why are you trying to go back and talk to your ex? Like, I don't have anything to say to him. He doesn't have anything to say to me. Like, he knows where I stand. I know where he stands. And she's like, have you asked? And I was like, well, no. And she's like, that's, we'll leave it at that, ask. And I did. Something made me go home, say something, made me go home that night and pray. And I mean, old school, right? Like, drop to my knees and pray.
Did you feel like, because your commitment is to the enemy, did you feel like you were like cheating?
Not really.
I know that's a weird question.
Not
like,
really.
I just wonder, like, how does that?
Not really, because like I said, that a lot of the full on like feeding into it and let me just be as evil.
Because you weren't part of like the satanic church and all that. You just had your own satanic thing going on.
Belief system and
But so you fall to your knees.
Yeah.
And
I pray. And I just pray. I just pray. I'm not expecting to hear anything. I'm like, what's up, man? It's been a while. What's up? And go to sleep like normal. Wake up the next morning, go to work. It's about 4:00 in the morning. And
that's really early to be at work.
Yeah. I step outside the office because I need my morning cigarette and morning monster. And I'm sitting out there. And I just look up and I'm like, see, you don't even have the guts to talk to me right now. I asked and you still won't answer me. Oh, Amber. He grabbed me. He grabbed me from where I was standing and took me back to that 16-year-old boy and showed me what really happened that day. When I was in my room, skimming over that old book of shadows and just spouting some gibberish about how I pledge allegiance. My eternal soul is Satan's. And I got to see it through his eyes. I got to see the spiritual world. I got to see the floor open up and those hands so happy to come and get a soul. And then I saw a single hand wrap around me in a voice, his voice, command, no, this one is mine. And the floor closes up and he pulls back. And just like that, I'm back there in front of the doctor's office.
So you're standing, you have a full-blown vision with a cigarette in your hand and a monster in the other, arguing with God. And the Lord's like, let me just show you the truth about how I see you.
Yeah.
Did you just burst into tears?
It took me a minute to be able to even comprehend a thought.
Wow.
I didn't know how to process what was happening.
So what did you like go home sick? What did you do?
I called Callie.
At 4 a.m?
Yeah. Cause she was on her own path and I knew she worked out early in the morning. Right. And so that's the only person I knew.
She's also a single mom. There's 2 little kids and you're like, how are you doing?
Because I knew she was at the gym. She had her schedule set up as such. I knew her schedule was gym from like 4 to 6 every morning. And so I knew that it was a safe time to like call. And I didn't even know if she'd answer, but I didn't know who else. I mean, especially in a situation like that, who all can you call and go, yo, God is real and he just gave me a vision. I don't know who to talk to right now. You know what I'm saying? Like, I didn't know.
Right.
And so
yo, God is real.
I'm just saying. And so I call her and she's like, calm down. Is everything okay? And I'm like,
she's on a treadmill telling you to calm down.
Yeah. And I'm like, I don't even know how to explain this to you. And she's like, are you okay? Like I'm hyperventilating at this point. And she's like, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm, trying to catch my breath. And I'm like, everything's fine. But you were right. Like my soul's not gone. Like I still have it and I don't know what to do. And she was like, okay. She's like, let me finish my workout, get my kids to school and like, I'll see you at work. And I was like, okay. She comes into work that day. We're busy. And so, paths kind of cross at one point. And I just pull to her, right? I go behind her and, do the whole little like, hey, will you do me a favor? Like, I don't know what any of this looks like. I don't know what's going on right now. I don't even know how to feel right now. Like I am more confused than I've ever been in my entire life right now. Pray for me. I know that doing it myself isn't all that needs to be done. Like pray for me. And without skipping a beat, she turns around from her desk and she said, I have been. And at that point I did. I had to leave the office. Because as an office manager at a psychiatric clinic,
ex-Satanist 24 hours ago.
I'm just saying, ugly crying in front of patients isn't a good look. We're trying to have patients, stay, not leave. So,
hey, they're crazier in there than I am, y'all. I cannot stay.
One of my jokes always used to be, it takes crazy to wrangle crazy. All right. And so there was a Starbucks with this little park behind our office. And I was like, look, I'm going to Starbucks. Like I'm getting out of here. And she asked me, she was like, hey, do you have time? Office closes at 4. Do you have time? And I was like, yeah. And so stuck around at the office, after hours and went and just literally walked around the park for, I think she called her mom that night and said, hey, that afternoon and said, hey, I'm going to be late. Watch the kids for me. She stayed there with me for a couple of hours, kind of talking through stuff like, hey, what does this look like? Like, I don't know how to be a Christian. I don't know how to be a believer. And she was like, well, you've already taken the first step. Like, you believe.
Right.
That's the definition of being a believer. You know he's real. And so, you know, she just starts discipling me and like, hey, let's, you know, find you a church. Let's find you, you know, let's take some steps, right? And so it all started from there. The true revival
of your heart,
of my heart, started in that moment.
Okay, so I know, Callie, you're not on the podcast, you're not mic'd, but I have to ask you, you were not at all interested in him.
Oh, heck no.
She said, heck no, y'all. When in the process were you like, your heart changed? When he cut that thing off of his hair? No.
You know, our story is kind of crazy because it's like he came to Christ like publicly about a month later, I would think. And then it was like, it was so God ordained, like, this is going to be your husband, you're going to be my wife.
So God just started putting the pieces together and started changing your
And
heart.
my flesh was fighting it in the beginning.
I love it. Okay, so I remember your first Sunday at church. Do you know that? Because we talked about it earlier, the Sunday that Jason Mock,
Yes,
who's been a guest on this podcast a few times. Can we just tell that story real quick? Because I think it's so funny.
Yes.
I think it's so funny. Because he's cowboy.
Yes.
With a long, like, big old bushy cowboy beard.
Yes.
Like
cowboy hat, boots.
Like knife in his pockets, probably got guts on it from something he
I'm sure.
killed.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Not a person. I mean, a pig or something. Okay. Rides horses.
Dirt on his boots because that's when he had just gotten into the competitive roping.
Right.
Yep. And
I mean, he wasn't a rancher. They lived in a neighborhood, but he did. Yeah. He worked for a cowboy church.
Yep.
He was roping.
Yep.
He's pastoring a cowboy church now.
Yes.
In the Midwest. So like this, you two were, needless to say, this is not about how cowboy was he. He was way more cowboy than you ever were going to be.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
But I also did not, because at that time, once again, I'm still trying to find myself, right?
Right. And Jason Mock is he's just genuinely nice.
Yes.
And what you see is what you get. And he super compassionate, but he reads people well. Yes. That's why this story makes me laugh so hard.
Yeah.
Like I can't wait to call him and be like, bro, you got to hear this. Okay, go ahead.
So
because I bet you he didn't even remember.
No.
I bet you,
actually.
Did you tell him?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Well, I found him at Easter service that year. And I was like,
I love that.
And I was like, you're one of the pivotal like
Did he cry? Because he's also he's a man's man, but he cries.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
So Callie invites me to church and I'm like, okay, look, I'm gonna be honest. You're inviting me to a cowboy church. Like, even though I grew up in the country, does it really look like
I've
this
got
is where
gauges,
I need to go?
I'm wearing Vans.
Yes.
That was your style.
Yep. I grew up in, like I said, Episcopal church. So I thought, Sunday best. So I'm wearing all black with a lime green tie, like, just do not the spiked hair. Like I know
it looked like you thought you were going to like a Green Day concert or something.
Yeah, it's
I'm
exactly
like,
what
I remember seeing you. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. What's happening?
But I told her, I'm like, look, not unless you go with me. Right.
I'm wearing
and she's like, look, I'm not going to go with you. But I'll meet you there.
She's still like,
oh,
bro.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And you're just in desperation. You're not trying to hit on her.
No.
I've got to figure this out.
Yes.
Okay.
Because I'm definitely a want to figure it out.
Right.
My flesh is a I want to know kind of person.
So you meet her at church. She has two perfectly beautiful children.
Absolutely. And she is taking them into
the kids' church.
Kids' church.
Right.
She's taking them in to go see you.
Yeah.
And I'm just standing out there, and this cowboy with a beard comes up and says, "Can I give you a hug?" And before I could finish his arm was around my neck. Amber, that hug, I can still feel it to this day.
Okay, here's what's crazy. We know Jason and Kendra very, very well. He's such a nice guy. He didn't go around hugging men. Do you know that? Like, that's not, he's going to shake your hand. That's why this is so funny to me, because he's not hey, I'm a hugger.
Yeah.
He is not. He's let me shake your hand, a high five, fist bump, whatever. He's not he's not. There are some men that are huggers, and that's fine. That's not Jason. Like, he'll hug his kids, and he's not, but he's not, I'm going to hug all the men kind of guy.
Yeah.
He's not that guy. And the fact that he comes up to you in your Green Day best,
and accosted me with love
in the church parking lot. And so what, in that moment, what did that do to you?
I finally felt accepted.
Right.
I finally felt like I was somewhere that I belonged.
How cool is God that he does that before you walk in? Because so many people are afraid to go to church in general.
And that's where I was.
Yeah. And so for God to say, listen, kid, I'm going to not only meet you there, I'm going to meet you before you go in.
Yeah.
So you don't have to worry about anybody's judgmental thoughts or anything. Like, I'm going to meet you in the parking lot, and you didn't know he was a pastor at the time, did you?
No.
You saw some
Callie comes down, and I'm like, yo, some dude in a cowboy hat with a beard just hugged me. And she goes, well, and of course she's like, you just described the entire congregation. And I was like, great. And it wasn't until I think the next service or something like that, I saw him coming out of the pastor's green room. And I'm like, that's him. That's him. And she goes, it's Pastor Jason. And I was like,
he hugged me.
He hugged me. Like, that's him. And she was like, okay, cool. And I mean,
here's your gold star.
Yeah, here's your gold star.
Put on your little lime green tie.
But I can still, that feeling in that moment.
Right.
Of, okay, I'm where I'm supposed to be right now. And that was the beginning of also me understanding I don't necessarily need to see the whole picture.
Wow.
I just need to just give me a little confirmation that I'm where I'm
supposed
at
to be
right now.
Right. So the Lord took you guys on this journey. Long story short, he began to heal you. He was healing Callie. He brought you guys together. You fell in love. You got married. You became the bonus dad.
By Pastor Jason also, by the way.
Pastor Jason, which is precious.
Yes.
You became the bonus dad to these two beautiful babies.
Yep.
And then you guys had two more.
Yes.
You have 4 babies. And God has just been doing a work in you. And I would say that you're radically in love with Jesus.
Oh, like nobody's business.
And I love it. And I love that you're in the process of looking at either blacking out your back, changing it, covering that up. But I want to kind of close this out on, because I think people think that, and then I had this radical conversion and now there's not been any temptations, or you still were dealing with smoking.
Yes.
And because it's been something you've done your whole life.
Yeah. 20 years.
Yeah. And you were around it before that. So, share about what happened a few weeks ago.
So I had begun the process of wanting to quit, right? Started cutting back, even took medication to help curb the cravings and everything else.
And for those of you that are listening that are super religious right now, I want to calm you down. Just calm down. I want you to dial it back a notch, because it's real easy to look at people who have gone through things that you've not gone through and assume that their situation should look different. Because I know there are people that are going to listen to this going, well, if he was a fully devoted follower of Jesus, he wouldn't be smoking those cigarettes, And it's like, well, hold on. He's working through healing a lot of things. And I love that our God, and we see it played out in Scripture, met people where they were at and walked them through. Like, you think about how the disciples walked with Jesus and acted and stuff they did, and he carried them through. So this discipleship season the Lord's had with you over the last few years has been amazing.
Oh, absolutely.
And so you've really just healed and been able to forgive. And now where it's like, it's time to quit smoking.
Yeah.
Right. So you're trying, you're on medication and you're doing all things, and it's an addiction. It's hard to do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's the funniest thing is I've seen preachers that are bigger than all outside that obviously eat enough food for a small village, preach at people for smoking. I'm like, well, you have clogged arteries because you eat fried chicken all the time. Like there's addiction comes in different forms.
Absolutely.
And so you're working through this process.
Yep.
Okay, go ahead.
And so I have a conversation with him. I'm like, look, man, I want to be done. And he tells me, he's like, why haven't you given it to me? And it made me do a lot of introspection. I was still, for whatever reason, just trying to hold on to something, and why, I don't know. But after lots of prayer, you know, that's where the hindrance was, because I had felt a distance, you know, like, you know, God and I's relationship is, we're ready to take that next step, but there's a little distance there. We can't take that next step. Why? I hadn't given everything up, you know, I hadn't fully committed yet. And so, you know, we have our talk, and I'm like, dude, I'm ready. And he's like, well, leave it to me. All right, take it. And he was like, no. I said, leave it at the altar. Ooh, all right. Never left anything at the altar. I've never, you know, only.
And for some people, that is a spiritual thing. Some people, it's a physical thing, right?
Yeah.
And for you, it was.
For me, it was because I asked him. I was like, all right, so I'm going to leave it at the altar. You know, I listened to some elevation. Oh, come to the altar. And he's like, no. He's like, I want you to go through the steps. I want you to make this act. And I was like, all right, man. Literally, you know, at the point where I wasn't smoking before church or anything like that. I'm not trying to offend people's noses going in there, offend my family, you know, anything like that. And so, but this morning, you know, that Sunday morning, I was like, whatever, and put them in my pocket. I'm like, I don't even know how this is going to look later. And then we go to service. We have a guest speaker that day. She gave an awesome sermon.
Thank you.
Awesome sermon.
Thank you.
About the fruit. And I just, the whole time at the end when you were doing altar call, he's like, you ready? You know, almost, I don't want to say taunting, but almost like, so are we going to do this? And once it was done, I looked at Callie and I said, I'll meet you in Growth Track. And I walked up to the altar, and it wasn't even anything sweet. I pulled them out of my pocket and I threw them down and then dropped to my knees. And I'm like, they're yours.
That is sweet, though, by the way. That is sweet. That is sweet.
Like, I don't want them anymore. You take them. Take it from me.
Okay, so the crazy thing about this story was 2 weeks later, we have coffee. You meet Phil and I at this really cool coffee shop in the Woodlands. And he says that, and I was like, wait a minute, hold up. Because that day, that weekend, Pastor Randy had asked me to come and speak. And that day, in between services, Marcy comes in and she's holding a pack of cigarettes. I was like, I had no idea you were a smoker, you know, joking around, you know. She's like, somebody must have left these. And I was like, where? And she's like, they were up at the altar. I don't know if they like dropped out, if they were praying and they forgot to pick them back up. And I said, and it's like I knew in my nowhere in that moment, I was like, Marcy, somebody just gave those to God. They just quit. Somebody just quit smoking. And she's like, maybe. And I was like, no, seriously, somebody quit. Somebody gave that to God. And so fast forward, didn't think anything else of it. We're sitting at this coffee shop and you tell that story. And I was like, I knew somebody did that. I knew that wasn't I left it in my seat or I left it somewhere, that it was a intentional, I'm laying this at the feet of Jesus moment. And I text Marcia, was like, do you still have the cigarettes? And she was like, no. And I'm like, oh, like it was so cool that I didn't even know your story. I've known you guys for a while because I've known the kids, and I hadn't, if you would have said, this is Matt and Callie's story, I'd have been like, no, it's not. And then for it to come back and know that I got to be I wasn't even part of that. I just got to be present.
Oh no, y'all, everything's a part. When
you laid those at the altar, and it just so incredible. And so you're telling us a story. We were just talking about One Love Voice stuff. And we were like, we want you to be on this podcast. And I just knew that there's going to be people that hear this. Number one, there's going to be a couple things. There's going to be people that hear this that have an idea of what a relationship with God, what transformation looks like. And we realize transformation looks different for everybody.
Yes.
There's going to be people who are on the fringe thinking that there's nothing they could do to earn God's love, and they already have it. And I hope that they hear that in this. And then there's going to be people that have been pretty self-righteous because they've lived in a bubble. And I hope that when they hear this, that they realize that every person that we pass on the street, every person we work with, every person in the grocery store, every person on this earth has a soul that Jesus laid his life down for. And he's in pursuit. And what can they be doing to help bring those people to Christ?
Absolutely. And you never know how the smallest things that
like
that
a hug
person,
from a cowboy,
or that coworker that God just keeps whispering in your ear to pray for.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and say this. If you're not walking with the Lord and you're hearing this and a coworker says that does not mean that's your wife or your husband.
No, not at all.
That is not like this is a formula.
No, not
I'm going to go ahead and
all.
protect that person right now. That is not.
Yeah.
And that's beautiful that that's how it happened for you guys. But like, I just want to publicly say right now, Matt, just the best is yet to come, man. First of all, thank you for coming on here and spilling all your guts and letting the world see everything. But second of all, man, what God can do with a yes is bigger than anything you can imagine. And I think you just need to buckle up because it's just going to continue to get better and better. And you've got 4 little people, 2 that are biologically yours, 2 that God just loved you enough. He let you be in their life, that are going to look and be able to see that's my dad. And my God is real because this is my dad's story.
Yes.
And that's amazing.
Thank you for letting me come on and giving me the opportunity. Because when I reached out to y'all, it was
talk about One Love Voice.
I just want to tell people how amazing he truly is.
He is.
Like just what the mountains he can move.
That's right.
And understanding he didn't put that mountain there to discourage you.
Right.
Put that mountain there so you could have the faith in him to move it.
Right. Amen. And going back to what that whole talk was, we're called to bear fruit. And that fruit is what causes people to go, wow.
Yeah.
There's something different here.
Yeah.
There's something different here.
Yeah.
I'm proud of you and I'm proud to know you.
Thank you.
And I love your family. Your perfectly cute little family. You guys have the prettiest babies. I'm going to just tell you that right now. Like you don't have an ugly kid. Maybe the day you do, you should stop. But like I've even said before, I hate admitting this. I'm like, y'all should have one more and just give it to Phil and I because our kids are grown and we would really love one of those cute ones. That's cute little ones. They're so cute. Oh, Matt, thank you for joining us today. And I just can't wait to see what God does with the rest of your story. And for those of you listening, I know I told you that this was going to be a lot and it was going to be pretty heavy. No matter what you're going through, no matter what your circumstances are, Our God sees you. He knows your name. He has a plan for you. And there's nothing that you can do that will ever separate you from his love. And if you'll call out to him, he will answer. And I encourage you to find a local church, find somebody to talk to, get involved, open your word, and start moving towards the things he has for you. And he'll meet you there.
Amen.
Yeah. All right. Y'all have a great week, and we'll catch you next time. I'm Amber Noble, and you have been listening to Grounds for Conversations. To ensure you don't miss our next podcast, make sure you subscribe, rate, and review.